Oh my God. And we're live.
Good evening, everybody. This is RAGIN with Krysta Crawford. This evening, this is episode 71. We are simulcasting to Geek Insider as
Crap.
well as RAGIN AVC. Nita's notifications are going off, which means we are live. That is confirmation. We are also streaming to Twitter. So if you want to interact with our guest, then you need to head over to our YouTube channel and while you're there, hit the subscribe button, and then check out the show notes because we've got her Kickstarter. It is Wolf and I, Tides of Truth 1 through 3 by Krysta Crawford. That's who we are raging with this evening, and her social media links are there as well. Follow her everywhere. Just don't peek in her windows because that's weird. We'll be right back after this intro.
Raging.
Hello, everybody. We are racing with Krysta Crawford. It is the Friday after Thanksgiving. Wake up from your turkey comas. And we're going to drop the card and say hello.
Hello.
How was your turkey day?
Oh, my turkey day was pretty good. We had a mirage of different foods, and we smoked the turkey this year, so that was kind of interesting. How was your guys' turkey day?
Very relaxing.
No turkey.
No. binge watching stuff, and still trying to get over my cold, but I feel a lot better today. So I want to talk to you about your creative journey.
Sounds like
the creative journey, comic books. Like, what the heck are you thinking? Because let me preface this.
Have you stalked her yet, Meredith?
I have. Across
Did you
socials.
see all this the amazing shit she does?
Yes,
crap,
indeed.
I want a pie from you.
But the thing is, it's like, okay, so I kind of started my comic book journey a couple years ago. Anybody who's tuned into the show has heard this time and time again. It's like, okay, eye roll, please. One of the hardest things I've ever done. I think it's insanity, but it's like it's totally my jam, right? It hits all of the things in my wheelhouse. What in the heck were you thinking?
Ooh, so I did not initially ever plan to jump into comics themselves. I've always been an artist. I've always been a writer. My grand goal plan 10-15 years ago when I really started this journey of writing stories is I wanted to be published as an actual text, like book, a fantasy young adult novel. And as we all are our worst critics, I changed things and I kept changing things. And like another year would go by and I'd reread it again and I'd add another chapter. But then I'm like, oh, wait, but then I have to change this because that would make more sense. And the book never got published. It went 10 plus years and it's still sitting on my computer. And I worked with the community. My husband and I own a print shop. So for 8 years now, we've worked with creatives, and I do my own art. So like we'd meet people at Comic-Con and I'm like, you know what? For my own personal journey, like I'm going to put out this comic or this book one chapter at a time as a comic. I'm going to combine my love of art and the story that I have written and make it come to life. And once it's printed, unless I republish it, there's no fixing it. It is as it is, the raw first cut, all of its beauties and flaws all in one. And so that's kind of where I got started on how the story of Wolf and I went from a book to a comic.
Yeah. So, okay. So starting off in prose then, what would you say your writing style is? Are you a pantser or a planner?
Ooh, I am definitely a planner. I'm definitely a this is the story in my head, and the characters are evolving and creating themselves, and I can see them play out different scenes in my head. And so I plan out like the basic skeleton story, but then as I'm writing, more things are evolving, the characters are becoming more round, they're becoming more relatable. And so as this journey evolves, I do the skeleton work as a plan, but the fluff itself just comes in the creative process.
The hardest part usually is the hardest part for most writers is, the middle, because they come out strong. They're like, I know how this is going to start, because, maybe they've imagined it on the big screen and they're like, yeah, I'm just going to take those snapshots and put it down. They know the ending. They know exactly how they want it to end. And then all of a sudden the middle just becomes like, blah,
What's interesting is I'm having kind of an opposite issue. I knew how I wanted the beginning to be. I like, this is how I'm going to start it. This is how I want to introduce the characters. This is how I want them to come together. And then I knew, like, in the middle, I'm like, I want this to happen, and then this plot to happen, and I want them to meet these characters, and I want them to get transported to this other world and start kind of realizing their destinies. And then when I was building up the skeleton for the end, I'm like, I don't know how I want it to end, which is part of the reason why it never got published, is because I was like, well, on one hand, I could go this way with it. And on the other hand, I could go this way with it. And then, or I could go this way with it. And it would all make sense. I'm like, but I can't do all of them. And so I have like 3 or 4 like really solid endings. And I'm like, this isn't a Goosebumps Choose Your Own Adventure book.
Pick one. And it's so hard to pick one, though, because you probably love all of them in one way or another. So that's kind of like where you just have to dive into the deep end and just go, I'm going this way, and maybe save those other endings for somebody else.
Or do the community and have the fractured timelines.
This is true. Or a what if like spin-off series. Like, what if it happened this way? No, and I'm hoping that, like, as I progress through this journey and, like, really building up these characters, and they're really becoming more in live with every issue that we put out, I'm hoping it kind of leads me into one direction. Like, I find my golden brick road of, okay, this is the solid ending. This is where I need to go in order to be where I want to be.
So being that you do the art, you don't really necessarily have to worry about a script so much. But have you worked with other people? Have you worked with other artists previously, maybe in a short story or an anthology or something like that, where you had to come up with a script?
So I have nothing that's been published, but I've definitely worked with other creators where we've come up almost like a Mad Lib almost. And it wasn't more of like I came up with it and then like they drew it. It was like a round table, like, okay, let's make a story together. And, we came up with these ideas and we built these characters and we like came up with these like short story plots. Nothing that we ever did with or on the back burner for future plots and plans for us to work on. But I love that, coming together with creative minds and being like, okay, this is where I'm stuck. What do you think about this? Where would you go with this? And kind of playing back and forth on each other, creating that together, I think creates just so much more of a wholesome story.
So what does your script look like then? I mean, do you kind of stay with prose because you are the artist? Or have you kind of studied the different formats of script writing? And I preface this by saying, when I started asking people what a script looked like, everybody, it was a non-answer. It was like, yeah, it's however you communicate with your artist. You don't have that problem.
I don't,
you might in the future.
In the future, yes. On Wolf and I, my plans are to exclusively kind of stay in, with my art style and with my story. I do have a flatter that does the flats, but everything else in the book, I exclusively do. So I do the scripts, I do the art, I do the coloring, and then the lettering and the printing. Do it all pretty much. I jumped into this really head first, and with issue 1, which was published 2 years ago, I really learned a lot from it. I tried to go at this comic book from a writer's perspective, where I took a chapter of the book and tried to take this chapter and turn it into comic book pages. And it is a whole different world, going from drawing pinup art as an artist and writing chapters as an author, and then trying to like combine them and take this visualization that's created in words and descriptions and actually apply it to a page in a way that makes sense without
Mhm.
being too many pages or not enough pages. Like, and so that was a really big struggle as like a beginner comic book artist who like, I was like, I'm just going to do this. And since then have learned a lot of, really been to a lot of panels, picked a lot of people's brains, did hours and hours where I flipped through hundreds of comics and kind of this process behind it and how I could help my creative process go from one totally different format into another.
Mhm. Being that I'm not an artist, sequential art scares the hell out of me. I could probably pull off, a pinup if I
Mhm.
really, tried. If I really, really tried. But the idea of
Woman, your art is amazing. Shut your mouth hole.
shush, this isn't about me. But the idea of taking a character and like repeat, and I understand that it's a lot easier with digital these days, but the
Mhm.
idea of going old school with pencil and ink and drawing that character over and over again, trying to get the consistency so you know who you're looking at on the next panel or the next page. And
Especially for
even
a flatter who's going in not knowing who's who.
right.
Mhm.
Yeah, and so, like, what was the biggest challenge for you going from, like, pinup to, like, sequential art and things?
I think it was 2 things. I think it was that differentiating. My 2 main characters have very similar, like, my art style is very similar. And I find that my characters look very similar, especially black and white. And so I tried really hard on defining, like, one particular character has a certain hairstyle that she has in almost every, one wears a
Mole.
ponytail.
I'd be like the big freaking mole that's on her
Yeah.
cheek or
One of my
something.
characters is half face, so she always has demi-pointed ears,
Mm,
in all of her pages and sequentials. I think the hardest thing as far as drawing it, besides, being sure to differentiate them, was, getting those dynamic poses, going from pinup poses to
mhm.
poses where they all don't look like they're doing the exact same thing. And they're having these conversations and they're pans where they're far away and they're close up and they're in these different dynamic poses. And my characters, have really varied backgrounds. One of them is a, aerial acrobat ballerina. And so in some of the scenes, I have her in very contortion like movement. So I had to do a lot of body movement studies. I redrew and redrew and redrew. I have like pencil sketches over and over and over. No, that doesn't look right. Because it looks in one way in real life, it looks one way, but to like make it look realistic in art and to get
Mhm.
those dimensions right just took a lot of studies.
Yeah. I mean, we've seen some art where, like you could, to what you were saying, you could take a photograph and you can try and put that into art, but
Mhm.
then when you're doing your line art and stuff like that, it might look like a disembodied hand, like what the
Yeah.
heck is that doing there, and so it's like that creative eye.
Mhm.
So when it comes to um putting everything together, do you kind of think in technicolor movies? Is it panel by panel? Like what is that like for you?
I feel like working through issue 3, things have come together a lot more smooth. In issue 1, and you can definitely tell, like, as you're going through the issues, just the growth in between them. It was a lot more choppy. It was a lot more like, here's like a picture, and then here's a bunch of text describing what was going on. And then issue 2 and 3 have moved more towards, okay, this is what I envision. This is how I described it in the chapter in my head. Okay, what would they be doing? Who would be like the background of them, the foreground of them? Who would they be looking at? Can I capture this in a couple different panels? Is this going to be a couple different pages? And so really working through that in my head, almost like like a movie scene where I'm like, okay, this is how I'm picturing it. So then then I block out, in my sketches and my like blue pencil, and I'm like, okay, this is kind of what I'm thinking, and then like can move like their arms or move it, just to get that like right angle. And kind of play with it. And then I could just go page by page through the story. I'd give like a basic blocking of the whole and then go through and do the sketches and then go through and do the lines, just to kind of tie it all in together. Cause I didn't want to like end a scene and then start the next one and be like, what the heck is going on?
When you're putting together your different panels and things like that, I mean, a
Mhm.
lot of a lot of newcomers, they have like layouts for dummies, square, 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 big,
Mhm.
center and things like that. At what point did you, or do you feel like you're going to get to a point where you're comfortable with kind of messing with the different panels, the sizes, maybe breaking the fourth wall or something like that,
Issue 1. I really didn't I really wanted to do it my way, and I kind of jumped in head first, and I'm like, I wanted different. I wanted dynamic. I wanted to not just stay in that brick wall of like 3 panels and this and that. And I did look at some and say, okay, what would make sense for this? But I have a lot of like panels where like the character's coming out of the panel, and I have weird shaped panels and unique stuff. I don't have any like set pages. All of my panels are like hand drawn or faded into one another, because I wanted it to have its own unique feel. I didn't want to give it that just like I threw my art into a bunch of boxes that were templated out. Not that there's anything wrong with that with beginners, but I like clearly like, I'm a glutton for punishment. So I was like, let's just do this the hard way.
Yay! Hey, I've always said it. Stay uncomfortable, my friends. You're always on a learning curve, and there's
Yes.
always
And
something to be
it
gleaned.
shows, and there's always something to learn about. And that's what the great thing of working with such a variety of artists is like, how can I do this better? How can I do it differently? But I don't want to copy somebody's art. Like, I want my own unique style. I want people to be able to look at my artwork and be like, that's Krysta Crawford, or like, that is definitely Wolf and I, even without seeing the title. Like, I can see the art and I know who the artist is from.
So Wolf and I, you've got 1 through 3.
Mm-hmm.
How far into this do you think you're going to be going with this? Because we've had some people who are like, oh, this is going to be 100 issues. And I'm just like, dude, 100 issues? I can't think that far. I mean, sometimes that to me would feel too big. I think I would probably just like atrophy. I'd be like, in fear. So when you're planning, because you mentioned something about planning earlier, do you plan that far ahead where it's this bigger story arc?
Yes and no. I definitely have enough content to do at least 20 books. I can't imagine doing like 100. I mean, 20 itself sounds like a lot to me. My goal is to, finish the story. However long it takes, that is my goal. With it being just me and a flatter, I'm not putting out a book a month or a book every 2 months, but I'm hoping to put out 2 or 3 books a year is kind of my like big girl goals.
That's a good goal.
So I want to be realistic. I work full time. I'm a pediatric nurse practitioner. And so this is my passion. And this is what I do because I love it. I love to bring these stories to life. And I'm so excited to like let others see this story that's been brewing in my head and these characters that I've just felt so in tune with, and help others find a way to escape even for 5 minutes of reading a comic book.
Sure. And I love that you mentioned that you're a pediatric nurse practitioner. Okay, so how in the heck do you balance the creativity with the work life, with the home life? Because there's always something to do at home, right? There's always dishes, there's laundry. You people, you keep getting hungry, so you have to keep eating.
And stuff and cooks everything and makes clothes, and it's like,
right?
This bitch is magical. I'm like,
we're looking at the
that's
outfit
how
behind
write
you
this
too.
stuff.
Yes. So
this is to block the pile of dirty dishes.
Oh. Love it. Hey, there's the creativity.
Distraction.
Right.
The mice are coming out later and handling that for you.
That would be really nice. I'm waiting for that day. I'm like, please, I will sing all the Disney-esque songs possible if some freaking mice come and fold some laundry and wash the dishes for me. Like, bring it on, baby. I don't care.
That's my idea of a vacation, is somebody else clean my house.
No, I would settle for the roaches from Enchanted.
Seriously, when you said that, I was like, I'd even go for the roaches and the pigeons, like whatever wants to come, as long as they leave it cleaner than when they came. I'm so down for it.
So when it comes to the creative process, though, there's got to be like, how do you find balance with that?
I mean, the balance is the art is my like happy place, and my motto is like, I'm paying off those educational bills, one comic at a time. But I just, I've recently changed jobs, and so that's really helped too. I've gone from working night shifts in the pediatric ICU, and now I'm working more like in a clinic helping kids not end up in the ICU. And so like the mental stress is a lot different. But, I have my evenings, my me time, and that's like my relaxation time. I see so much, I talk so much, I'm passionate about what I do and like helping kids and helping their families and teaching them like the everyday stuff. But I come home and I have all of this like muse in my head. It's like over exploding throughout the day. It just builds up. And, that's my like nighttime breakdown routine. I either read a book. I'm on book 72 this year so far. I just
Very
got a book
good.
in the mail and I'm so excited. It'll probably last me till the end of the year, but I'm super excited because I got my new 900-page book in the mail.
Oh my goodness. No, I have a reading problem.
I have a reading problem.
I have to read from cover to cover, so I will go without sleep. So
Yes. I'm one of those. Ooh, is that the birds chirping? Is the sun rising? I should probably sleep for like 30 seconds.
I was like,
I see the
oh, damn.
sunlight peeking through Meredith's blinds or her curtains, and I'm like, oh, we did it again.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
Every
it's a terrible
time.
reading problem, especially if it's a 900-word book. That would be like 3 days of not sleeping.
Yes. Well, I'm so excited to like have this weekend off. And I was like, I'm going to be, reading a lot of this book. It's the next book in the Outlander series. So I've just been waiting for 2 years for
wow,
this
girl.
book and it finally came out.
Very cool.
But yes, so my evenings are consisted of like my me time. So I've got like an hour where I'm like, okay, I just have to let it all out, whether it's drawing, reading, sewing. Like I love making historical gowns. I love making costumes for, Comic Cons and stuff. And so that's just kind of my time. Otherwise, like you balance your time. I'm at hockey games with the kid. I'm making dinner. I'm cleaning the house. I'm going to work. And you just kind of have to find that balance. And sometimes it tips in one end or the other and you don't fold laundry for a week and then you catch up again.
Hey, you know what? The
Oh,
laundry
I
is
hope my
always going
husband's
to be there.
watching this. Please
Right?
be watching this. This is one episode I want you to see. It's normal.
It's always
normal.
going to be there. Let me tell you something. My mother at some point when we were younger, she just gave up. She's like, I fold these for you guys really nice, and all you do is just shove them. You're like this, looking for the clothes you want to wear.
With the teenagers, we don't fold anymore. It's like if they fold, they fold. If not, it's throw it in your drawer. And
Totally
with the
wash
rooms,
and wear.
Yeah, it's
like,
clean.
Totally. Because I'm to the point where it's like, shut your door if company comes over, and in about a month, I'm gonna snap and I'm gonna tear your room apart, and you're gonna put it back together, and then we're gonna do cycle and repeat.
Yeah.
I can't.
You got to fit it in.
Outnumbered.
You fit it in the 5 minutes as you're waiting for your live stream to start, and you're over there like folding things and putting them on hammers.
So now you were saying something about cosplay. All right, you got this whole creative thing going on. I mean, you're hitting a lot of buttons there. Okay, so in your family, were you like the alien that they didn't know what to do with, or do you come from a creative family?
A little bit of both. I think I would say that I'm the more creative as far as like art and sewing and that kind of stuff. My sister does dabble in art a little bit, and she actually drew some of the stickers that are available on the campaign as a birthday gift to me, so that was really nice of her. And then I find my family's kind of got their own little, like they have too much in their head. We'd have a lot of like physicians and neurosurgeons and stuff who on their free time convert regular cars into electronic cars, and
Okay.
We get bored easy and find new things to do.
The creativity runs strong in your family.
And I thought blowing up ant piles with firecrackers was fun.
So when it came to cosplay then, what was your first experience and what was your first outfit?
Ooh. So I've been sewing since I was like 8 or 9, not cosplay specifically, but just in general. I love to sew. I love just getting to like take a sheet of fabric and seeing what I can do with it. As you can see, I'm working right now in a 1940s World War II kind of inspired nurse's vintage outfit, which I'm super excited about. I love doing villains, and one of my very first couple of costumes was Baroness from G.I. Joe, who I've remade multiple times. She's one of my favorite like villains. And then General Ginger which not a lot of people know. She's actually from way back when The Wizard of Oz was written. There's actually like a whole like bunch of books. It's not just one book, and she's one of the characters in it. And God, I can't think of is it Big Dog Ink, I think, redid a lot of like the fairy tale stories, and so they brought her back. And I'm like, I didn't think anybody knew who this character was, and so she's another one that was one of the first ones that I ever made. So those two, and then I think Scarlet Witch. So those would probably be my top 3 of the original costumes that I've made and have remade.
Is that something that you make for yourself, or do you kind of commission out your gifts?
I did commission for a long time, especially as I was working my way through school. I did a lot of like Etsy sales. Mostly lately, I've just kind of put it just to like personal sewing projects, and then for the kid.
And what does the kid think about it? Because I tell you what, my
Mom's
kids
magic.
are grown.
That's what.
Oh no. I have grown kids now,
Yeah, but
and
you were mean.
so I live to embarrass them.
You are
Yes,
magical.
and because they're old enough to handle their own therapy now. So what does the child think of?
She
of
likes
Mom's
it.
topic?
I think some days she likes it more than others. I think she likes, you know, she's been doing it since she was 6 months old, so it's just part of her every day now. Some days, you know, she's approaching 9.5 now. So some days she tries to act like she's too cool for stuff like that, and then other days she's like, I want to, you know, dress up
she's
and go and do
grown now,
things.
Forget it. You're done for until she's like 21.
I know. Oh yes, and Star Staffer and Batgirl, but those weren't one of my original ones. Those were a couple years Dutch.
Well, before we take a little bit of a break, I wanted to say thank you to everybody who's tuning in. We've got Chris Fisk, who's misbehaving. Facebook user, declare yourself. We don't see who you are. This is what it looks like. Yeah. So head over to our YouTube channel and just interact with us while you're there. We've got artwork by Dutch that says, hello, everybody. Hello, hello. And we've got Trish Bankston, who's here. We're not talking about the 30-pound egg. Poor Nita. Oh my goodness. She'll never live that down. And we've got Hasm Productions. So that could be Tina. That could be Rodney. I think it's Tina, though.
I think it's Tina.
It's Tina. Rodney's
We
drawing
love
live
Tina.
right now.
We love Tina.
We love Tina.
And congratulations on a successful campaign for Roadkill Rampage as well. We are going to be talking about Wolf and I, Tides of Truth 1 through 3. And we're going to, well, before we take a little bit of a break, I wanted to ask you more about the kind of like the writing organizing process. Are you kind of deadline oriented, or do you kind of go with the flow with things? And the reason why I'm asking is because, you know, you were saying how your comic books, you know, you'd be happy with like 2 or 3 a year. Plus, you know, you take the time to do your, you know, the sewing and things like that, other crafts that you do. And so a lot of that is, I guess, task oriented or like in the moment type of thing. How do you kind of work in that sense? Is it like one thing at a time, or do you kind of float from one thing to the other?
I've got like as many books as I read at one time. I have as many projects.
Oh, you're one of those.
I'm one of those people.
Oh no. How many books do you read at a time?
Ooh. I try to keep it below 5.
Oh my
How
goodness.
the hell do you do that? My brain is scrambling. Just
All right,
about it.
Nita, maybe you need to lick her brain.
Maybe so. I'm sorry, Mare. I'll catch you.
Usually I keep to like 1 audio and 1 physical that I'm reading. Sometimes I'll do like one. Usually I'll do 1 audio and then I'll do 2 or 2 physical. There's been a couple times though where it's like I'm halfway through a big book and I'm like, no, I just have to read the short story. Like I know I'll get through it in a day, so like I pick it up. And or if I get stuck on a book where I'm like, I don't want to stop reading it, but it's every once in a while you just get that book where you're like, I just can't, like I read a page or 2 and I just can't get into it. But it's one that I'm like,
Wheel of Time.
oh, that book took forever. It
Girl,
took forever
3
to
years
get
to
through.
read the first one.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and I almost committed to rereading I only read the first one. I haven't read the rest of the series, but I almost committed to it again this year, and I'm like,
I did too. I picked it
So,
up for a week.
Is that the same way with your costumes, though? I mean, do you have like a plethora of like unfinished projects and things, or are you kind
yes
of
and no.
dedicated to the one?
You know, once I started, I'm pretty dedicated to it. I do have a lot of like, okay, I'm going to make this costume and I buy all this stuff. And then it's just like, I just can't start it. And once I start it, then it's like, I just have to finish it. With the exception of this beauty here who
that is really nice.
Has been staring at me for quite some time.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost done. I literally have to hem it and put the buttons on, but it's just been like the last thing on my list with everything else. And so it's like, I keep staring at it. I purposely put it in my way so that I look at it and be like, girl, you got to finish that.
So now, is that something that you're doing for cosplay, or do you actually go out and do like reenactments and things like that too?
This was just a personal like passion project. As a girl, you went 10 years and you got your doctorate, like make something cool for yourself. And clearly I made most of it.
It's very, very cool. Very cool.
Thank you.
We are going to take a little bit of a break. We are raging with Krysta Crawford. Make sure that you head over to our YouTube channel. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do. And make sure that you share this out with your friends. We are talking about her creative journey, and we will be talking about Wolf and I, Tides of Truth 1 through 3, which is on Kickstarter. The links are in the show notes, as well as her social media. And I told you, follow her everywhere, just don't peek in her windows. We'll be right back. We're going to give our friends a little bit of love from Catch the Craze. Nita, you got the button?
On it.
It's Monty Moore. I'm a 30-year comics veteran in comics, games, and movies, and you've been watching one of my absolute favorite podcasts, Catch the Craze.
You are watching Catch the Craze.
What am I listening to?
And you're listening to Catch the Craze.
Where are all the indies at?
A Catch the Craze podcast. What are you watching?
I'm watching Catch the Craze.
What are you going to do?
Subscribe now to Catch the Craze, the #1 show online for independent.
Have you subscribed to?
You are an independent. Catch the Craze! Making moves on your own. Catch the Craze! On your grind in the streets. Catch the Craze! Join the movement. Catch the Craze!
We are not Catch the Craze. They are so much cooler than we are. But we're going to drop the card here because we are raging with Krysta Crawford.
And better looking, too.
Yeah, they're better looking. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. Let me see. Catch the Craze, says Chris Fisk, the only trustworthy CDs. What in the world? Chris, go away. No, we love you. So we are
Chris
talking.
knows to cancel cards. Don't read his comments out loud before you read them to yourself.
I can't help
Meredith.
myself. I'm like, squirrel. There it is.
You're like shiny object.
I know. Chris is my shiny.
She loves him. She does.
All right. So we are back. What other things? I mean, nurse practitioner, with the itty bitties, with the tiny humans, sewing, comics, writing. What else do you do?
That's a weighted question. We could spend the next 12 hours talking about that. The easier question is, what don't I do?
What don't you do?
I, as Nita has mentioned, love to bake and cook and make all the things. I love to garden. I love to woodwork. I love to learn new things. I love to learn languages. I love to play board games. I'm on a committee for here in Arizona who we run our annual board game convention, Maricopa Con, who's actually launching their Kickstarter soon. So you buy your tickets through Kickstarter, and then you get like really cool stuff. Like we give out like custom dice that has Maricopa Con on it, and a badge banner and all these different things we've done. Just a neat thing. And it's a small indie kind of like gaming convention where it's like 300 people, and we just play board games all weekend. It's like one big family get together of people who actually want to hang out together and play board games.
You are such an old soul. I'm sure people have told you that.
Yes, this is true. I've lived many lifetimes in the past. We'll just put it that way. But yeah, I love life. I love adventuring. I love learning new things. I'm always like, oh, sure, let's try that. Let's learn that. And sometimes I don't like it, and sometimes I never do it again. And then it gets moved to the donated or given to somebody else who wants to try it pile. But I find such joy in, learning new things and then giving to others. So I'm constantly like trying to help others, trying to do things, cooking for people, helping them in any way that I can. And it just makes me happy.
So when it comes to like adventuring and things like that, what is the thing maybe that like the most adventurous thing that you'd like to try or maybe already have? Like jumping out of airplanes or bungee jumping, things like that.
What's funny is I'm not good with heights.
No.
With the exception of aerial silks. So I can climb 30 feet up on an aerial silk and like do a double drop roll down, and that's fine. So I feel very in control. I know like I tie my knots right. I cannot bungee jump. Like that is not in my like any sort of plan in my future. No airplane jumping, no hang gliding, anything like that.
But aerial silks, another thing.
Yeah, I love
goodness.
circus, like Lyra and aerial silks and trapeze. Like that's just so much fun for me. I don't know. I like, seeing the great wide world. I grew up a lot like camping and going to national parks and seeing different things and hiking 10 miles in with your backpack and camping up next to a glacier fed lake in the top of the mountains, and then, nothing but what you bring in and what you bring out. I just think there's something special about kind of getting it away from some of the social media and kind of like immersing yourself in what's really out there.
I love that because it's so important to like stay in touch with nature, I think, whether it's going for a walk or, just being among the trees or just, wiggling your toes in the sand, wherever it is that you're from. It's just that's something that I completely miss. I live in Florida and the biggest thing that I miss is rocks.
Yep. Unless you're in Arizona sand, because then it's like 120 degrees and you might burn your toes off.
Right. Yeah. You could probably fry an egg.
You can. And you can cook cookies on your asphalt.
Oh my god.
May or may have not done that in the middle of the summer. It'll take like 6 hours, but it's possible.
Wow. So somebody who knows.
As
That's
an Arizona
awesome.
native, we've definitely done some interesting cooking experiments outside in the sun.
So when it comes to, because we're at the end of the year, right? So when it comes to 2022, what does your calendar look like as far as putting books out, but also maybe events where people can meet up with you?
So I have 3 booked events already. I have a library con in Tempe, Arizona in January, a library con in Verde Valley, Arizona in March, and then Phoenix Fan Fusion, as long as they don't cancel it or push it back again, in May. And so that's our big one here.
Oh, very cool. So have you thought about maybe going out of state, kind of traveling to the other bigger events?
I have, and I've done it in the past. Although we've stayed mostly like local West Coast, I've done a lot of like Albuquerque and Las Vegas, and and then different shows around Arizona. Just with COVID and a new job, trying to find that balance of what's worth traveling and what's worth not. And then we have hockey like 6 days a week here at our house, and so it's hard to like live somewhere for more than one day.
Yeah, my husband was he played hockey for the majority of his young life, and then it was his knees and stuff like that. Getting beat up against the boards was kind of tough, a little tough on the body. So that's really cool. That's really cool. All right, who's your favorite hockey team?
Oh, well, I mean, I have to go the Arizona Coyotes.
Oh, okay. That's all right. I forgive you. I'm a Jersey Devil girl myself.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, if I was being real true, I'd have to say the Arizona Kachinas because it's my daughter's team, but we root for the Coyotes.
That's awesome. We are going to bring up your Kickstarter here in a moment and talk about that. We were talking about the creative journey and all the fun stuff. So like in 2022, so you mentioned that. Please talk a little bit more about Maricopa County and what they're
Or
doing there.
Maricopa Con. Oh, I'm so
Maricopa
excited.
Con,
Yeah,
yes.
Maricopa Con. So it's a board game convention that we hold every year. This year will be, I think, our 9th year running.
Oh, wow.
Yes, 9th year running. Last year, or this year in August was our 8th year. And it's just this really cool, unique thing. It's Friday night and then Saturday and Sunday. There's like scheduled board games. There's board games tables you can just come and play your own board games. You can sign up to host a board game. And it's just a very unique experience. It's a very like family-friendly event where individuals who like to play board games can get together and try new games out, play their favorite games, meet people with similar interests. A lot of people meet up and say, hey, for the rest of the year, like, let's meet up and do a D&D game every weekend or once a month or
Fun.
and then it's just and it's grown, and it's just been such a cool to be part of them and part of their the community involved in it.
Were you part of that from the very beginning?
Not the very first year. I joined in year 3. I was brought in as a guest, and then I helped with their they did have a costume contest for a little while. Although the fan genre and then just the genre base of people that were coming, it just wasn't really a good fit. It was in that peak where everybody was doing costume contests. And so we really involved it more to be more game focused. And that's when I jumped on the committee. And so I've been helping them ever since then.
Very cool. I mean, I very rarely find people local, especially my family, who want to play board games with me. I don't know why. I mean, there's just something about them that's just I don't know if I want to say nostalgic, but it's just something where it's a really great way to pass the time,
Yeah. And it's fun, and it's, can be competitive. It can be cooperative. We support a lot of indie games on Kickstarters. And so we play a lot of new and upcoming games. And then we've got our, our favorites. And for a while there, pre-COVID, we would have once every week or once every other week a game night at the house and just have people over and play different things. And we didn't play the usuals like Monopoly or Chutes and Ladders. We'd play a lot more RPG type of games and strategy type games.
What's your favorite strategy game?
Ooh, that's a hard one. I don't know. I don't really have a favorite because it kind of fluctuates depending what type of mood I'm in. I really like deck building games where you kind of have to build up. Those are my favorite style of game. As far as board game styles, I also in digital video games, I like a lot of Sid Meier's Civilization games where you start from the basis and you work up your city and you build up your city and you build up your armies and you build factories and build people that mine things, and I love those.
And so we're taking a look at your Kickstarter here. I see quite a selection of variant covers and things like that. What was the decision to kind of go with variants?
So my decision to go with variants was kind of twofold. I love to see how artists can take my story and character and put it in their own style. I like to look at this and be like, that's a Shelby, that's a Trevor Grace, that's an Alfred. And because the artists that I brought on don't have that similar style. There are certain artists who are okay, that's a prodigy or a protege of so and so. Their art style is so similar that unless I knew who drew it, it'd be I had 50-50. And so I wanted to bring on people that I'm this person has a unique style. I wanted to see, my characters in their eyes. And then the other thing is I love supporting people. And so I don't have just well-known big top dog creators. I have some middle and I have some smaller creators who are up and coming because I wanted to be able to support them. I wanted to be able to take my projects and the funds for my projects and be able to help them achieve their goals of being an artist and pay for them to be on another book so they can say, hey, look, I was on this book. Hey, look, I did a variant for this. Hey, look, my art is out there.
Now, I see that you've created 3 Kickstarters so far. What has been the biggest challenge for you as far as maybe putting one together?
I think It was the first one. I've successfully funded all three, or so far 2 of the 3. The third one is this one here, which we have 9 days left on it. The biggest part was just kind of I underestimated how much time it would take. So the first 2, I had the book mostly finished, but I didn't have it finished before I launched, and it finished, and then life happened and COVID happened, and the world kind of fell apart, and I was working like 60 hours as a nurse, and there was no time for creative freedom at all. And so it delayed my time of getting the comic out to people. And that was really, hard on my own heart, like, because I wanted to get it out. But when you work a 14, 16-hour night shift trying to keep kids alive in the ICU with everything going on, and then going home, you just want to sleep because you have 8 hours to sleep until you're back at it again. And so they were successfully fulfilled. Everybody got their product. And so that was my big thing is, I was like, issue 3, I'm not even going to start it until I am like ready to send this to the printer, knowing that by the end of the campaign, like no matter come hell or high water, like this will be able to go to the printer.
I love that. That is the roadmap that I want to do, because it's like I want to do my own comic, right? But having had my own experience with prose, and I had this great idea. I'm going to write 5 new stories if those tiers sell. Oh my God! Then life happened. Then it was just like a move, packing. Unpacking, finding your stuff, and not losing your marbles with all the stress of it. It was just
and not wanting to put out a bad product because you're just trying to rush something out in order to deliver it.
Yeah. So I love the idea that you've got something that's pretty much print ready then. Yeah. And so we've got the Ultimate Collector's Pack. There was something in here that I saw that I wanted to ask you about. Let me see.
Of course. Was it the gold editions at the top?
I think it was the gold edition. There was so we're scrolling through and we're seeing the different covers here.
Yeah. So all the variant covers are on metallic foil, so they'll all be like high quality collectible items. The only cover that's available in like there's Steph. That was a challenge. I really approached Steph, and I went back and forth. I'm like, should I have Steph on my comic? He's such a big supporter of the indie community. I'd love to have him. I'm like, but his style is not really teen rated. Now, granted, if you've seen issue 2, Karen Alfred did this amazingly beautiful cover for me, but it was very, very PG-13.
I think this was it. This is like claimed. What are we looking at here?
So I did a special mid-campaign to kind of help with the lull in the middle. And I, exactly at 6 p.m. on a last Friday, released 1 of each cover on a gold foil. So they're limited edition 1-of-1s of each of the variant covers. And so first come, first serve. Like there's only going to be 1 once it's claimed, like unless they cancel their pledge. That's it. And so it was a little bit of a higher end price tier. This isn't for your like everyday just want to read my comic. This is like I want a collectible 1-of-1 that I can get graded or framed or put up, and say I have my favorite artist cover like of Wolf and I issue 3 to have. And so this was kind of just something new that we did this year. I do have my cover available on gold, but it's a limited 10/10 and it is numbered. But these were 1-of-1s because I wanted them to be super special. I didn't want them to just be like, oh, I got, the one of the gold ones. I got the only gold one.
Very cool.
It was very hard to part with them though. I put it up there and I'm like, I don't want any of these to sell because I want to get them all graded and just have this rainbow of gold foil covers on my wall. But there's only 3 left. So they're available as add-ons for any tier, like so if you back a tier, you can add it on, and those are the only 3 that are left available. All the others have been claimed. And then I believe there's 6 left of my gold cover of the numbered ones. And so they'll be numbered in the order that people purchase them.
And tell us what we're looking at here with the owls and the moon.
So that's one of the characters in the comic. It's a meowl. It's actually Anastasia. She's the seer in the comic, and she can shapeshift into the Meow. So the Meow is a creature that's part cat, part owl. It has flight, but has 4 paws, and she comes from a clan of shapeshifters that can change into Meows. So this is an actual enamel pen. It's a hard enamel pen, which I have them in hand. I pre-ordered them, so it was not one, it wasn't something that we were having to wait on to get delivered. I know that was the biggest thing that a lot of these creators are having to delay their Kickstarter, because they're waiting on swag, they're waiting on add-ons, they're waiting on stretch goals. And so I didn't want that to be a hindrance. I wanted to order it in advance and have them in hand. And so the moon was a stretch goal, which we've already unlocked that people can add on. And then the Meow is a pin. And that picture.
Here, let me get you on the big
nice
screen.
size. It's bigger than it looked.
Yeah.
So
all right. So I have to know, where did the Meow come from?
It was just a creature that I made up in my head. I love owls, but I didn't want the character to just be like an owl. I didn't want her just to it's a mystical fantasy adventure, and they go into this other world where there's all these things happening. I'm like, this has got to be out of this world. And I was like, what other creature do I love that just has that majestic look to them, that has kind of like that secret identity? And I was like, cats. Throughout history, they've always been the unknown presence. And so that's where I created this owl cat, basically, and we called it a Meowl.
So wise and probably
mischievous,
savvy.
yes, sassy.
Very cool. So here we are. We have Wolf and I, Tides of Truth 1 through 3. 9 days to go. So this ends December 5th. And there are a couple of gold covers, one-on-ones. Make sure that you guys check that out as well. There was something else I wanted to
the whiskey glass, probably.
The whiskey glass is gorgeous, but I kind of let's see that.
The picture, it's hard to see it without whiskey in it. I can't.
Does it make you a little bit nervous adding that to a tier?
As in what manner?
As in, just like shipping costs and everything, because shipping is a beast, especially this time of year.
My book shipping in January, and it does explain that down in the shipping. I do have a Christmas card tier that people can add on. That's $1, where I'm going to ship the adventure is coming to you January 2020, Merry Christmas, just a cheap, obviously it's $1 add on. It basically is eating the cost of it. But I wanted it to be able to have that somebody could give if they're giving it for a Christmas gift, or even if they wanted just a collectible Wolf and I Christmas card.
Very clever.
I did incorporate in the cost difference of shipping. So the ones that have the whiskey glass will be shipped in a box that has been what's it called? It's got insurance on it. So if anything happens to it, we'll be able to replace it, and it'll be wrapped in its own individual boxes. I had them on the side here. Hold on.
So the Wolf and I, excuse me, Tides of Truth 1 through 3. Creatures crawl through the night. Secrets of history shall come to light. Internal powers before unknown. 2 heroines face a...
Ooh. Well, if you want to know, you could play the video and it'll show the rest of it. The video is quite short too. It's only like a minute and a half. But each of them comes in their own little box. So it'll be securely in their box, and they're nice and tight so they don't shake, rattle, or roll. And then these will be bubble wrapped, and then they'll be in another box. So they're in a box with bubble wrap. So trying to ship them as securely as possible, and then with that insurance too.
Definitely. So when it comes to writing, obviously you mentioned fantasy, young adult, and things like that. Is there a genre that you've ever said, hey, I want to try that, or a genre that you said, nope, never going to go there?
Horror's not my big thing. So I don't know if I would ever get on any sort of horror novel or story. I definitely like, steampunk. I like science fiction. I like fantasy. I like, romance, young adult, all of that's my love base. Horror would probably be the biggest thing that I would steer away from. I've gone back and forth on doing a kid's book. It's definitely something I've got a lot of things sketched out in the works, skeleton wise, just never put together. I do have a fantasy themed cookbook that I'm putting together, and will be hopefully next year, either in the spring or the summer, depending on where Wolf and I lands, launching it. It's going to just be like a small passion project. I've had a lot of people ask for some of my recipes, and I was like, well, I might as well put it together in a book that people can enjoy, but make it fantasy, because why not?
Right. Oh, so much fun. Wow. So if you don't mind, we'll play your video.
Go right ahead.
Awesome. Let's get that up on the big screen here, and here we go.
In a land slowly overtaken by darkness, eyes peer into every nightmare. Tread carefully, take heed and beware, for creatures crawl throughout the night. Secrets of history shall come to light. Internal powers before unknown, choices are made, worlds are shown. Two heroines are faced with the choice to band with friends and unite their voice. Against this evil they must stand. The fate of Craeweth lays in their hands.
I have to ask you, Krysta, when you put that together, did you have a hard time not talking or writing in rhymes? Oops, hold on a second. Where are we? There we are.
The funny thing is that kind of came to me in an impromptu thing. I was in a show before making the video, before launching, and I was thrown in my face like, you have 30 seconds, throw together your blockbuster spring movie like spiel about this. And I was like, oh boy. And thankfully I had already put like together some kind of like, okay, the story is, the land of Craeweth is being taken over by this dark force of evil werewolf shapeshifters. And, she keeps having nightmares. And if you've seen issue 1 and 2, like a lot of this is like coming through where she'd have nightmares where she like sees this wolf in the darkness, like coming after her. And then, as the story progresses, like creatures are coming out, from everywhere. There's different creatures coming here and there. And they grew up and they're not who they were, they were raised as humans, and now they're finding they're not as human as they thought they were, and they have these powers that are now manifesting, and as they're thrown into the land of Craeweth. And so all of that kind of threw together, and that wasn't like the first like initial, like it just blurted out of me, wasn't quite as rhyming, wasn't quite as like nice and neat, but it was very just full of that. And then as I finished and I sat back and I thought about it and I watched the video again a couple times, and I'm like, I really like that. It just needs a little tweaking so that it flows better. And so I had a couple different versions where I'm like, okay, this rhymes with this, like, I like this, let's add in another sentence. And I think there's something about like the whole thing doesn't rhyme, but there's definitely a lot of like key phrases that like draw people in, that makes your brain start to think, okay, what is she going to say next? What is the next sentence going to be? And I really just wanted people to like able to envision it in their head, to listen to this and be like, I see these characters going at like panoramic, like the wolves coming out on this side and the main characters are sitting here and their powers are starting to manifest, and eyes twinkling in the background of a forest as you're standing there, and like the mist rolling in. And I just wanted that visualization for people. And so that's kind of where this whole spiel came together.
It's really kind of cool too, because when you hear that, it's kind of got that sing song, so it's easy to follow. And so it's very easy for anybody to get fully immersed into that, which is what we want as creators, is like to be fully immersed into our stories. And so putting on your like fantasy creating hat, what has been the biggest challenge for you as far as maybe world build? Is it world building? Is it, like the things like the different creatures that kind of wander your world? Does it start with a strange name and you're like, oh, I can do something with that?
I think the hardest part is I'm like, how am I going to transition from them being in the human world to them going? I was like, am I going to have a magic portal? Am I going to have somebody like transport them? Is something just going to poof and change them? And so one of the big cliffhangers that I had is them transitioning from going from the human realm, being chased, like trying to escape this dark shadow that's chasing them, and then falling into almost like an Alice in Wonderland hole of just magical, tides of truth. So they basically land into they have to take this step into this dark pit of water where they saw this creature, this friend that they hadn't, invested in, dived in, and they're like, do we follow? Do we not follow? Like, where are we going? And so having to take that jump of truth and that jump of trust, basically, and where it transported them. And so my hardest thing is now that they're in the land of Craeweth, really not jumping ahead and kind of slowly taking people through the journey and helping that, it's not just an action fight. Like, I want it to be like a fantasy novel. I want them to have these like conversations and these dialogues and this character building and meeting people and building themselves up. And I think sometimes it's hard for me not to rush into, okay, now a battle. Okay, you learned this, but also not having 6 pages of like them trying their powers over and over too. So that balance.
I think there's we're at our hour, so forgive me for going a little bit over because I have to ask this again. There's a lot of misconception, I think, when it comes to fantasy writers, that they're just making it up as they go along and that there's no research to it. But I think that's false. I mean, do you find yourself doing a lot of research when you're writing your stories?
So much. As I'm, researching myths and lores and habitats and creatures. And obviously there's a lot of fantasy involvement. So things are crossing worlds and things aren't always like to truth of what we would know it in the human world. I mean, I've got purple sand and turquoise waters and, double moons and things that just wouldn't scientifically make sense. Although there are lavender beaches here, I think in South America.
Oh, very cool.
And so that was kind of a funny, like, unknown fact that I ran across. But I think there's a lot of research that goes into it, into like, what do most people believe about this? Like, what do most people believe about, mermaids? And I have a lot of like magic powers. And so, what are the different genres? How do people see them? How does the magic like shown? Because there's one thing to say you have the power over wind or the power over elements or the power to shapeshift, but it's like how to represent that, like how to show that happening in the scene without being like, you're human, poof, now you're a wolf, or you're human, poof, now you're a meow, and like showing that transition. Doing a lot of history behind, how creatures move and how they walk and how they sit and how they hold themselves. And, a lot of, looking into, how are battles formed and how are kingdoms run and what's the dynamic and what's the like probabilities of different things happening.
Yeah. I mean, it's really a lot involved in the writing process. Excuse me. People, again, you think fantasy and it's like, oh, they're just thinking of it off the top of their head, but there are a lot of influences. Do you ever get lost in your research and you're like, oh my God, I gotta stop because I don't know, like, how do I get back there?
all the time. And I think that's what drags some of this out is I'm like, how do I include all of this? But I don't also want to include all of this. I just want like snippets and bits. And I think I run into a lot of like that conflict of being an author and being a comic book creator is like living with a foot in 2 different worlds. On one hand, I'm wanting to write these paragraphs and pages and pages and pages of description and story and character building. And and I had a lot of trouble in issue 1, like not wanting to put giant blocks of paragraphs in my comic, and had to, like, my husband's looking over my shoulder like,
cut it.
You need
Cut
a,
it.
need a
with the
Good for him.
scissors.
Good for him.
Oh, I'm telling you, I started with prose. Spent the
Mhm.
last 2 years working on comic book scripts and things like that. I've got Anita that says, "You don't need it, cut it." You know, and I'm sitting there, and now it's like trying to get back into prose, and I'm like, "Where are my words?
Yeah.
They're gone." It's like, please come
You
back.
didn't
So
use
I
them
definitely
anymore.
have that over my shoulder. I'm like, is this too much? Is this too little?
Right.
Like, or is like, should this be a scene instead of a paragraph? And so you see the growth, and that's one of the biggest things. Like, part of me is like, I just want to change issue 1 because there's scenes where I'm like, this character, the art style doesn't quite like, add up, and I didn't have that fluidity, and I had a lot of paragraphs, and I had a lot of like not a good transition scenes. And then in issue 2, you just see it move so much more seamlessly. And issue 3 it's come together a lot easier too, because I'm seeing the dynamic of, okay, now I see my story as a comic and not so much as a book that I'm trying to chop up into pinup pages, basically.
Mm-hmm. And so, with all the episodes or the chapters and other books and things that you're planning on putting together, have you? I know this is terrible to ask. Have you thought of other IPs that you wanted to develop, or is Wolf and I the thing that you're going to focus on?
So I think I want to do all the things. That's just who I am. I do want to focus
Do
on
all
Wolf
the
and
things.
I should have a shirt that says "I do all the things." Oh, you found something else? Let me tell me all about it. I do want to focus on Wolf and I because at least I want a good, like, solid beginning and end. I do want to get Wolf and I as a printed as a graphic novel for people to catch up. Once I have 4, 5, 6 issues, that way they can get it as a chunky book. As I talked about before, I did want to put out a fantasy a fantasy cookbook. And so I know that is on my table, that is in the works. A friend of mine and is working with me is kind of, how do we want it? Do we want it more art, more pictures, more black and white with just, cover? And
You have the really cool recipes in there, like potions and like.
Oh,
Disney
yeah.
stuff. Oh, girl, yes.
Oh yeah. I already have, like, it's going to need to be a couple of different style, like, books. I'm going to have to do like a tea themed one and like a summer barbecue themed one and then like a holidays themed one, because there's just so much. But I definitely have like fairy berry scones, and I have mermaid bubbly water, and
Nice,
all
nice.
things coming together. Drinks, and scones. The only things you need in life.
Oh my goodness, that sounds amazing. On that note, we are past our 1 hour mark. We generally ask
fast.
one more question at the very end, and that is, if you were going to give newcomers coming into the industry
Mhm.
comics or prose or anything else that you're doing,
Any creative.
yes, any kind of indie creative, what would be the best piece of advice you could give them?
Ooh, don't lose hope. Don't feel bad asking for advice. I think that was the one thing that I knew so many people. I mean, I own a freaking print shop. I was printing comics, but I jumped into it, and I wish I would have asked for a little bit more advice before I like just jumped in and started a Kickstarter and started my first comic. I wish I would have asked for a lot more feedback. Because I think that would have put me on a better foot at the beginning. And then just talking to people too, spreading the word out about it. Don't just jump in and be like, here's my Kickstarter. Don't do any podcasts. Don't post about it on social media, and then wonder why it didn't fund.
And I could probably talk to you for another half an hour about the print business, but if you want to give that a shout out too, I mean, you guys have been dealing with some issues, paper shortages and things like that, but definitely give your print business a little shout out.
Yeah, they can check us out. Easiest way to get through us is Facebook, Hero and Villain Designs. We're here local in Arizona, but we ship worldwide.
Oh my god, there's so many people that use you guys. Okay.
Yes.
Very cool.
We are known, and we like helping people make their dreams come true. So that's what we're here for. But we are just a print company. We're not a publisher. We're not an editor. So we're not here to like do edits or like, we're here to print. So that is one of the biggest challenges we've faced as a print company, is we have a lot of people, they're like, here's our book, and nothing's formatted, and there's text that's written wrong and nothing's the right size and stuff. And so it's been a lot of like educating newer people, like make sure, and that's another thing I'd put out advice for newer people, like make sure when you send stuff, regardless of where you send it to be printed, make sure it's formatted correctly, make sure what you're sending is the final print. Like don't send something to the printer and then the next day say, oh, I'm going to change this page and then I'm going to change this page and then I want to change this cover, and keep sending stuff, because then things get lost and confused. And if you're going to get the quality of what you're sending, and if you're not sending it high quality, like there's nothing you can do on the print side of it if you don't send high quality that are the right size.
Very good. On that note, you guys, we are out of here. Let me put the card up here. We have been Ragin with Krysta Crawford. Make sure that you get over to her Kickstarter, give it some love. If you backed it already, thank you. If you haven't, that's okay. Hit the share button, share it out with your friends, your network, and just spread the word. It's very easy. Hashtag hit the button. On that note, we are out of here. Oh, you know what? I need to drop the card here because we want Krysta to say the words. Krysta, do me a favor.
Of course.
Can you say throw my dudes?
Throw my dudes.
We're out of here, you guys. That was awesome. Have a great evening. Bye-bye. Hey there. This is Meredith Loughran with RAGIN. And I wanted to let you know that we encourage and promote independent creators and their projects through organic interaction, consultations, and more. Visit Nita and me at RAGINAVC.com for details and contact information. Hit the button.